Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Monday, July 20th, 2020. And here are our top stories. We'll be getting a view from the Hill and other takeaways from last week's DCIA Spark Public Forum. And then what can you expect at this week's event? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Melissa Kahn. She is a managing director with State Street Global Advisors, an investment management firm, and also part of the executive board of the Defined Contribution Institutional Investment Association. Melissa, welcome to the program this morning. Great to have you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Jeff. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And so we're about to enter the second week of the Spark DCIA Public Policy Forum. But last week got off to an amazing start. You kicked things off. We had a great keynote from a congressperson and I think one of the other board members. But you led an amazing panel with the Internal Revenue Service and other regulators. But I want you to give us a snapshot, if you could, of what you talked about and some key takeaways from last week's panels.
Sure, happy to do that, Jeff. So the kickoff session was a discussion with the regulators. And as you probably know, and your audience may or may not know, there's been a lot of activity coming out of the IRS, Treasury, and also the Department of Labor, partly as a result of the law that passed at the end of last year, what we call the Secure Act, which had a lot, it was all focused on improvements to our retirement system. And then, unfortunately, the pandemic hit. So we had the CARES Act that was promulgated back in March, and that had some retirement provisions in it as well. So the IRS and Treasury on the one hand, and the Department of Labor on the other hand, have been super busy, both getting guidance out on the Secure Act as well as getting guidance out on the CARES Act. So the session really was focused on a lot of the activity because over the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 months, we've seen a lot of guidance come out from both of those departments.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Even with the COVID pandemic, folks, I guess, are working remotely. They're having conference calls and they're putting out new regulatory guidance. I mean, we had things on ESG. We had things on alternative investments. We had a private letter ruling, in addition to what you were describing with the CARES Act. So a lot of activity, which from our point of view, my point of view, is that it's amazing and great that they're generating so much content and information to help people save for retirement. At the end of the day, that's the number one mission.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that they are full speed ahead. Fortunately or unfortunately, we see this usually in the last year of every administration, particularly the last number of months. I think that there is this race to get guidance out because they're, with the election coming up, they're not sure if the administration will continue or if it will be a new administration. So they're racing to try and get things out the door. And also between the CARES Act and Secure, there were certain deadlines in those bills. So they needed to get the guidance out quickly. We're still expecting more guidance from the Department of Labor that's already over in its final stages of review at the Office of Management and Budget, lifetime income disclosure. They also have a proposed reg over there, I think, on proxy voting. So we're seeing more and more stuff come out. It's like, stop. We can't absorb it all, but yeah.
What's it to that end? I mean, you talk about absorption, and you're someone who does a lot of government relations. You're part of the executive board of DCIA. DCIA is not a lobbying organization, but they do a lot of conversations. What's it like to process when, just as an aside, I know we're talking about the conference, but what's it like to take that, to get these things and to process them? I mean, what's that process like for you and the team at SSGA and at DCIA?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff. You were on the conference yesterday, so you heard my first question to the Labor Department folks was, you've come out with such a flurry of guidance in the last just month with such short comment periods. Like, why is that when some of these are so impactful that, the regulated community needs more time. And you heard Joe's answer to that, which was, or Jeff's answer, I guess, which was, well, we think that these are reasonable time limits, but if people feel that they need more time, people ask us for extensions all the time. We are, depending on the day, I'm either working on the PEPs, the open multiple employer plan request for information, or I'm working on the ESG reg, or now they've come out with the fiduciary prohibited transaction exemption. So depending on the day, we at SSGA are working on that, and obviously working through our different trades. As you mentioned, CA is not a lobbying organization, but they do provide education to the various agencies in the Hill. So they are doing comment letters on a number of these pieces as well, and we're working with all the trades also.
When it comes to the CARES Act, I think there's been some talk about additional stimulus, and would that potentially have an impact? When I talk about stimulus, I mean some of the stimulus checks, but we had CARES Act provisions. We had, I think, delay of RMDs. We had early withdrawals without penalty, things to facilitate, which we're not advising people take if they don't have to. But a lot of these things, would you expect that we would see additional relief in some capacity? Again, I don't want to put you out on a limb, but just what you're hearing maybe and what you're discussing amongst policymakers. Would you expect that when a new bill is authorized or signed, or however it goes down, that you would see more relief possibly in that area as well?
Yeah, another good question. We do work very closely with Congress, and you saw that the House came out with another package, the HEROES Act, and that had a number of retirement-related provisions in it, dealing with multi-employer plans, also defined benefit funding relief, some cleanup from the CARES Act, other provisions dealing with required minimum distribution relief. So, we work very closely with Congress. I think that they are going to have some other retirement-related provisions in there.
Mm-hmm.
Portman and Cardin, we work very closely with them. If you saw, Charlie Bolton was on the afternoon session yesterday.
Yep.
And so we work very closely with those offices, and they are trying to push more of their Portman-Cardin bill provisions into either the next stimulus or whatever they do before the end of the year. We also work very closely with Chairman Neal's staff and Chairman Neal on the Ways and Means Committee, and they are looking to introduce Secure 2.0 later this year. So I think that there is the possibility we'll see more retirement-related provisions down the road.
Yep. Yeah, there's certainly need at the individual level, and I would say probably, in my opinion, states, municipalities, pension contributions. You mentioned multi-employer plans, a lot there. Last question for the segment, Melissa. In terms of the virtual conference, the first time doing this as an organization for DCEA, which Lou laid out and Tim Rouse the week prior kind of laid out, this is a unique thing for both Spark and DCEA. These organizations, really, the face-to-face, so vital. But how is that virtual, we're talking virtually, of course, but how was the virtual panel? You were the moderator in that first session. I think Chris Gaston from a law firm in DC was the other moderator in the second session. How was that for you, and what was the feedback like?
So as you know, there was a little glitch at the beginning, a technical glitch. I was on mute. Obviously, like you point out, Jeff, it's always better to be in person, face to face. The networking is always at DCEA forums one of the most highly rated feature of the forum. People getting to that chance to connect with each other. So I think that that's a little unfortunate. They did have some sort of lounge where people could go, and I did go to that to see how popular that was. But there weren't a lot of people in there. But I think it worked fairly well. We had a great audience. Well over 300 people were on the sessions. So I think as far as what's the next best thing to being in person, I think that it worked well.
Yeah, from my personal opinion is I thought it was a great look. We all want to be in person. Looks like that's not going to happen for any in the foreseeable future. I think this is a good step, and you got to keep the conversations going. This is the way to do that. There is there's only so much you can do by looking at each other on a screen or texting and things like that. But I think it's a way that people are going to have to conduct business. And I think it was an auspicious start to the week, or to these sessions and to the forum. Melissa, I want to go to a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk to Melissa about what you can expect to see and hear at this week's upcoming Public Policy Forum event. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive FIBREX composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Melissa Kahn. She's a managing director for State Street Global Advisors, an investment management firm, and also part of the executive board of Defined Contribution Institutional Investment Association, or DCIA. Melissa, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is fun.
Yeah, it's a pleasure talking with you. And again, great work by the DCIA Spark teams, great moderating duties by you and Chris during the sessions. Let's talk about this week coming up. Wednesday, again, another set of sessions. What can you tell us? What can people people can log in for free. They don't have to pay. That's kind of unique for a conference. And it's a chance for organizations that are not a part of DCIA or Spark to be a part of a DCIA and Spark event. And there's a lot of, as we talked about in the first segment, a lot of back and forth and a lot of networking, and you can learn a lot. But what can we expect when we log on this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's a jam-packed agenda for this week. So in addition to having 2 general sessions like we did last week, we are also going to try something new. We're going to try breakout sessions. So we have 4 topics coming up, and we're pretty excited about them. So the first 2 sessions, as you saw, Jeff, were focused on domestic issues and domestic policy here in the U.S. We're going to start to veer a little bit away from that in week 2. So there is going to be 1 domestic policy session focused on a deep dive on MEPs and PEPs and what's going to happen next and sort of the implementation of those types of vehicles. So that's going to be one of the general sessions, and I think that's going to be great. It's going to be moderated by Michael Davis from T. Rowe Price. And it's going to be just sort of how they're going to work in practice. And some are already in practice, as you know, there are some sponsors of MEPs today, not as fulsome, obviously, because the new rules haven't kicked in yet.
And you make a really good point. I mean, I think, last week you talked, and the group talked about domestic issues. I think one of the great things about this forum is that you bring in the international flavor, and there's so much going on around the world with defined contribution and defined benefit plans. Obviously, the forum is focused on defined contribution primarily, but there's a lot of lessons, I would imagine, Melissa, that can be learned from, for example, the UK with their NEST program or the superannuation funds in Australia. So many of those governments have moved to a defined contribution construct, and therefore, we're not the only arbiter, meaning we, the United States, is not the only arbiter of where you can find success.
Oh, absolutely. I've learned a lot from the UK, and I think that over time, we've each borrowed from each other. A good example, because I, in my former company, used to spend some time in the UK and actually in this company as well. And when they were going forward with, as you point out, NEST and this auto enrollment into defined contribution plans, where it was a mandate and every employer had to have it, we talked about auto enrollment with them, because we had already implemented auto enrollment and auto escalation here in this country back in 2008, if you recall, from the Pension Protection Act. They also are PPC, our Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, and how that was set up before they set up their PPF, their Pension Protection Fund, and learned lessons of what to do and what not to do. So particularly with the UK, we learned lessons. And now with a lot of the states implementing their mandated retirement, their secure choice programs, I think a lot of them have looked at what other countries have done before they've implemented.
Yeah, I mean, that just seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, why do you have to rebuild it every time? There's a lot of experience. I'm sure there are tons of academic papers written, professional research done. Why not learn from others? And I know just in talking with people from the secure choice, for example, Oregon or California's secure plan, the others have taken lessons there and tried to bring them into their programs. So it makes a lot of sense. And I guess one of the benefits of coming to a DCEA and Spark event is not only do you get these global macro issues, but if you're an employer, for example, you sponsor a 401k plan, or you're a government sponsoring a 457 or a pension program, there's all this information that can be had and brought back to these fiduciaries, these committees, to make even more informed decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on, and I think that your example of the different secure choice programs that are being implemented is a perfect example. Oregon was sort of the test case. Illinois learned from them. California learned from them. Yeah. Now there are other states that are either implementing programs or putting in place legislation, and they're building on the successes and some of the stumbling blocks that those early states encountered. So I think you're absolutely right. We're all learning from each other, both the good and the bad.
Well, I mean, that's the benefit of having groups come together, is you get the strengths and the weaknesses and try to input the strengths and try to solve for the weaknesses. Last question, Melissa. Retirement security is so important, obviously, and we talked about the CARES Act throughout the show today. Do you have a sense for the impact to American retirement security? Just anecdotally, I'm not saying you have to pull out a whole bunch of research, but anecdotally, what you're hearing from your record-keeping partners, other members of the DCEA, members of Spark, in terms of participant activity. I know there are some polls showing that retirement security significantly impacted, others showing that people kind of weathered the storm, didn't touch their assets, are in a pretty good place. Just anecdotally, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, the early data seems to be all over the place. I think there was, if you will, like a spike early on, whether it was out of fear or a lot of people losing their jobs in service industries early on. I know from one record keeper that they saw a huge outflow of money in April as a result, right after the CARES Act passed. I think that's leveled off a bit, but with the resurgence of the pandemic, where we're having shutdowns again, we may in fact see more of that. So I think this is like a moving target right now. I think that we won't know until we know sort of how the ultimate impact. And to your larger point, Jeff, all I would say is we were obviously supportive of the CARES Act. We know people need money. They're facing adverse financial consequences right now if they're laid off or they've been sick, but the long-term impact on retirement security is going to be profound.
Yeah, I think, and your point about we don't know, I don't think anyone has a feel for anything. Everything seems very fluid right now, which I think is really disconcerting to so many, but I think there are people that are advocating and working hard to do what they can to react. Melissa Kahn, always a pleasure chatting with you. Congratulations for a great auspicious start, and look forward to checking out this week's sessions at the Public Forum. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.